Today, what we're going to focus on is this. We're going to focus on showing kindness to other people. And the reason for that is this. One of the most impactful things you can do in someone else's life is showing kindness to them. For an example of how powerful it is, in third grade, so this is when I was 8 years old and I'm 38 now, so 30 years ago, I do not remember more than maybe 3 people's names in my original church that I grew up in for the first 18 years of my life, okay? Other than maybe family members. So that's the 3 people. Except one other guy, and his name was Kevon Binder, right? Is that his name? Kevon Binder. I don't know what his wife's name is. I don't know what his kids' names are. I don't know what anyone else's name in the church is. The reason I remember him is because of an act of kindness that we believe came from him. And the reason was this. In third grade, I came down with some type of illness, and I had something growing in, like, on the inside of my neck here, and the doctors can't find out. And I was out of school for 5 weeks. And it was one of those situations where, like, the school's, like, writing you cards, and you're getting cards from all of your classmates and all. And end up towards the tail end of it, when they couldn't find out, end up at Children's Hospital in Detroit. And at the time, I didn't realize where I was, which was a cancer ward, because they had cool video games, like those sit-down ones, and there's bald kids, and you don't connect all that in third grade. But they started to get my parents prepped for that I might have leukemia. And we were getting to the point of having to do a spinal tap. Is that what you said? A spinal tap at that point. But I remember having to go up there all the time, and it was back before they could switch out the needles with the different blood things, and you had to actually get poked every time. So I remember as a third grader getting poked like 50,000 times with blood tests and all. But in third grade, I remember I'm out of school. I asked my mom this morning, I'm like, I don't think I remember having a lot of symptoms other than like a fever. And she's like, you were lethargic. And I was like, okay. So I was lethargic. So I just sat around all the time for 5 weeks. But somewhere in the midst of that, I remember, and I can tell you the details. It was an evening time, probably 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. No, the sun had just gone down. So it might have been 7:30 in the evening, and we got a knock on the door. And we got up out of the living room. We got out the door, and there's a present on the front porch. And we go out and we open it up and it says for me or whatever. And I remember opening it up, and inside it, this is the amazing thing of the internet. You can find something you never thought you could. And I found it. Inside the box, these were like little mini video games back when like the big box ones were there, and they started selling these things. In my family, there's no way we could afford anything like this. We didn't have that capability. But this thing shows up, and it was called Spiders. And no one left a name, no one did anything, and we always attribute, I remember my parents going, I think it was Kevon. Is that who you guys remember? Okay, so we remember this. That's why I remember him, because I got this gift just blind out of kindness as someone leaves something on my porch, probably because they thought I was going to die, but hey, it doesn't really matter what their thoughts were. Get this thing on the porch, and I get it, and I'm playing with it. I remember playing on this thing all the time for years. And I had it up till high school. I remember still being like in my closet there. I'd get out from time to time and play on it. And long story short, somehow, after like 5 weeks, it just started to clear up. Like, we don't know why. They never came up with answers. It just started to clear up. And within like a week or so, I was back to full health and back to school. And I was like, okay. But anyways, that simple act of kindness has stuck with me for 30 years. I remember the day. I remember the guy that did it. And I remember no one else, because kindness and an act of kindness given to you is extremely powerful. And God gives us that role. He gives us the role of going, we are the ones that are supposed to be showing kindness to the world around us. We have this passage I want to look at this morning where Jesus kind of details how important it is for his people to show kindness to the world around them. Here it is. It comes from Matthew chapter 25, verse 34 is where it starts. And it says this, and Jesus is talking about judgment day here. He's going, at the end of time, there's going to be a judgment day. And he says he divides people into 2 groups. And here's what he says to the first. He says, then the king will say to those on his right, and this is Jesus, the king. He will say to those on his right, he will say, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. And then it goes on, it says, then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever hunger and feed, or when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. When you did it for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me. Okay? We've been spending weeks going, how do you find God in our chaotic world around us? And this scripture gives us a very clear answer to that. And it is this: by showing kindness to other people, you at times are directly serving God and showing kindness to Him. That's how you find God in a chaotic world. Now, what we see here in this passage is different ways you show kindness, okay? And Jesus, I believe, in this passage is very intentional. And what he does is he kind of outlines different degrees of sacrifice and commitment and acts of kindness that God might put in our path. And as you look through this passage, he goes through and it increases the sacrifice and the commitment at each level. Let me show you what those are, okay? The low-level commitments and sacrifice of showing kindness to people. He starts off with 2. He starts off with this: I was thirsty and you gave me what? A drink. I was hungry and you gave me what? Food, okay? Common sense ones. These are low commitments. When he talks about drink, this is the lowest commitment it gets, which is I saw a very basic, practical need presented by you and I met it. I saw you were thirsty. I gave you something to drink. Okay? What could those things be in our culture? I just came up with a few that I was thinking of. Opening a door for someone. You're walking up to a store, there's other people around. It's a simple thing we used to do all the time. Opening a door and let others go first. That's an act of kindness. It's simple. It's an act of kindness. Someone drops something. You pick it up. You hand it back to them. You be the one to get down before they get down. Pick it up for them. Hand it back to them. Simple, low commitment, low sacrifice, but it is showing kindness to someone. That's like giving a drink to someone. He says here, providing food. I was hungry and you gave me food. Taking someone out to eat who needs it. Have you done that before? Have you done that? Have you taken someone in need before where they're asking for money and you go, won't give you money, but hey, why don't you come over to a restaurant with me and we'll eat together? Okay, I'll provide you food. Or why don't you come over to church here and I'll hook you up and we'll get you some food, whatever it might be. It's a simple act of kindness. It's not a long-term commitment. It's not a long-term sacrifice. It's a low commitment way of showing kindness to a brother or sister, to a fellow human being. Okay, that's where he starts. Then he jumps it up a little to the next level. And these are what I call the medium commitment sacrifices he gives. And the 2 he gives here is this. He says, I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked, you bought me clothing. Let me give you a context from biblical times and our times, okay? When it says I was a stranger and you invited me into your home, this was a fairly typical thing that you did back in biblical times, which was if a stranger came into the city, it was not unusual that the town, people in the town, you naturally went out and you brought them into your house and gave them a place to sleep for the night. That was something normal. It was a customary thing you were to do, okay? For us, that's a little bit different. If I were to say to you, hey, there's a stranger here, can you take him home tonight and just put him up in your house for a couple days and live there and stay there? Most of us would go, you're saying that's a medium commitment? That's like life-shattering commitment, okay? You know what I mean? In our culture today, that doesn't translate the same way. But what it was you're willing to give of your time, willing to give us some of your treasure to help out a fellow human being. That it wasn't just a simple act that was a little service thing I did to him. Now it's going, you want to give up a little money. You want to give up a little bit of what you own to help that person out. That's the second degree of kindness. He brings up the other one there. He says, you bought him clothes. Okay? It goes a little bit more than just putting them up in a home. Now he says, you actively went out and bought them clothes. You spent even more than just feeding them at home and giving them a place to sleep. You took a little bit more money, a little bit more care, bought them clothes to take care of their needs that they had at the moment. I was naked. You bought me clothing. Okay? This is what I consider the medium commitment, the medium sacrifice level of showing kindness that God might put in your way at some point that you have to be willing to step up to. Okay? The third one starts to get into the high commitment, the high sacrifice area. The last ones he mentions are this. He says, I was in prison and you visited me. Okay? He says, I was sick and you cared for me. Okay? These get into high commitment, high sacrifice opportunities and relationships, which is showing kindness beyond the normal way that we show kindness. The first one is this, the prison thing. You look at that, and today, it's easier for us to do that than it was back then. Today, you can go downtown and you can go to the prison, and as long as you dump out your pockets and leave everything at the desk, you can go down and visit anyone across from a window, and you can take time and visit them. No one knows you're there. It doesn't put you in any situation where your reputation's on the line or your security's on the line or anything like that. Back in biblical times, what it was is if I'm going down to prison, I'm putting my own reputation on the line, because people are going to see me hanging out with those people and going down there and assuming I have someone that's a family member in there or a friend of mine, and I'm associating with a prisoner. That is not a good thing for my reputation. It also puts you in a dangerous environment, which means I was putting my physical safety in harm's way to go visit someone in prison back in biblical times. This is high commitment, high sacrifice, which is, are you willing to put your reputation, are you willing to put your safety on the line at times to show kindness to someone that God puts in your path? And this is one of those where we go, I don't know. Okay, we can come with all sorts of excuses why we won't. But this is where we start to struggle. But Jesus goes, this is one of the opportunities I might put in your path. You have to be willing to show kindness for. The other thing he talks about, you were sick and you took care of me. Okay? Again, we live in a medical society. Sickness doesn't scare us as much as it used to those people. We know how sickness travels, and we know how to prevent it from getting from someone. In biblical times, they didn't. If I just looked at them, maybe I'll get it. Okay? What he's saying is here, you're putting your own physical life on the line to care for me, and long-term progression here. This is a commitment that's not going to be a one-day thing. This could take months until I get well or healthy again. But you took pity on me, you had kindness, and you nursed me back to health. Okay? Anyone, people I know just in the church have done that. Waylands, you guys have done that. You know what this one feels like. And you know the stress and the cost and everything else that goes with it, right? Okay. They took in an older lady who had no real family, stable place, and they lived, how long did she live with you? A year? A year long. Okay? That's a major commitment. So they aren't family tied to, no reason they had to. Just this was a chance to show kindness, and they show kindness. A year-long commitment, taking care of someone. Okay? That's what Jesus is outlining. He's going, there are these major commitments I might put before you that you have to be willing to step up for. And he says the reason you're willing to is this. By showing kindness in these ways, you might actually be serving God himself. By serving others, you are serving him. You want to know how to see God in your life? Show kindness to people. Because by showing kindness to them, you are showing kindness to God. You are interacting directly with him. Does that make sense? Okay? The second part of the scripture is a little different, though. The second part is kind of the flip-flop, and he shows you the opposite of showing kindness. And what he does is he says the opposite of showing kindness is you withhold it from people. Here's what he says in verse 41 and on. He says, then the king will turn to those on his left over here, and he will say, away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons. For I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked, and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me. And then it says their responses, because you can see these people go, whoa, ho, wait a second. I never saw you. Okay, I never saw Bill Ramsey. What are you talking about? Okay, there you go. Full circle. I brought that back in from my mistake earlier. Okay, you see that? But what they're doing is they're over here being judged by Jesus, and they're going, wait. We never saw your face and didn't help you out. We never saw you. And that's their reaction. They say, then they will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and not help you? And he will answer, I tell you the truth. When you refuse to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me. So these people are shocked, and they go, if I had seen you in those situations, I would have helped you. And he's going, you did. You saw it all the time around you. When you saw it in anyone that was struggling in those situations and you didn't help out, you weren't helping me. You neglected me. Okay? So I started to ask this question. Why do we do that? Because we can probably all admit we don't show kindness as often as we probably should. Okay? Why is that? Why do we see opportunities and pass them by? I came up with 3 that I think are probably cover all of our reasons. The first one, and I think this is probably the least likely, or at least I hope, this is the least likely, talking to primarily a group of Christians. The first reason I think we would possibly do it is we're too selfish to care, which is I'm so preoccupied with myself and my life, I could care less if I see anyone else in need, because you have no value to me and I don't care, because you can't provide me anything back. If I do show you kindness, I could care less about you. I am too focused on myself and too internally selfish to give a rip about what's happening in your life and to help you out. That is one reason we could miss all the acts of showing kindness to people in our lives. Like I said, I think this is probably the least likely, knowing the group I'm speaking to here, okay? The next two, though, describe us. And this is the next one. Another reason we don't show kindness, we're too busy to notice. One of the things that happens is this: we get so much on our plate. We have so much stuff we have to do that when we see the little act over here to open a door, when we see something fall down to reach up and get it up, when we see someone over here that needs some clothing, when we see someone we need to take out for a meal, when we see those opportunities, we go, dude, I've got 15 other things I got to get done. Somebody else will do it. And at that point, I'm just too busy to notice it. Or we're so busy, we don't even see those things happening around us. So we miss them. And we don't show kindness the way God desires for us to show kindness, okay? I think that one probably describes a lot of us, knowing what our schedules are like, knowing the lives that we run. We get too busy to notice the needs around us. Here's a third one. I've heard this one directly. We're too jaded to engage. Let me tell you what that means, and how many of you have said this. You see the guy with the little cup when you pull off the highway. And we all have this story because we've seen the story on TV 50,000 times. He's probably making $45,000 a year living in a nice house, and he's just down there living free off of my money I give him, right? That's jaded. That is, I already have put in my mind, I already have it in my mind, this person is taking advantage of me. This person isn't doing this with legit reasons, so I can excuse myself from helping them because they're not doing it with legit reasons anyway. So I'm not really turning down helping them. I'm so jaded, I know they're crooked. Right? We do this. I struggle with this one. I'm at this church all week long, and we have people come in here. And I've learned, I had one lady, this is how bad it gets, and this is where you have to fight against it. I had one lady convince me that her daughter just lost her newborn baby and needed help. And we sat and talked about similar experiences and how to cope with that for like 45 minutes to an hour. And she asked me to do the funeral because they have no one else, they're not churchgoers. Would I do the funeral? And then at the end of it asked, do you have some money? I got to get some prescription drugs for her to do this. And it's a lady I'd seen multiple times. I get done with that conversation. I don't give her nearly what she wants. She wants like 50, 60 bucks. I remember giving her like 10 or something because I knew she was kind of fishy anyways. But I went, you don't go this level. Get done, call up Moore's funeral home, and I'm like, do you guys have a funeral for this? I need information. She hasn't called me back, and they're like, we don't have a funeral for that. We've never had anything in that. You want to talk about becoming jaded, okay? You share personal insight and personal story with someone relating and going, hey, I know how it feels. Here's what you're going to go through, blah, 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 blah. And then you find out they were just doing it to try to scam money off of you. Can that stop me the next time? No. Okay, I cannot become so jaded I won't engage with people. We cannot, as Christians, get so jaded we refuse to show kindness to people. We have to sometimes go the responsibilities on them. My role is I just saw someone in need, I show kindness. Does that make sense? What I want you to know is this: do not let those things up on the screen neglect you from showing kindness where you might have the opportunity to directly engage your Creator by serving His people. That's what we are called to do. So this week, we're going to focus on showing kindness on a daily basis. That is your focus this week. On a daily basis, you identify a need and you meet it. You show kindness to someone intentionally. What I need you to do is this: you need to stop and take time to be aware of the situations around you, because every day there are opportunities for you to show kindness. Whether it's with your family, whether it's with coworkers, whether it's driving home, whether it's in Walmart, wherever it is, there are opportunities to show kindness, and we as a people of God are called to be the ones leading it. So this week, stop. Take time to look around the situation around you and look for ways on a daily basis to show kindness. Okay? That is your focal point this week. And by doing that, you will be engaging God face to face. Would you pray with me?